Welcome to your On TV News Desk. I am in the studio today with Mayor Christian Provenzano. How's it going today?
Very well. Thank you for having me here, Riley. It's nice to be with you.
Anytime. So you've been hitting the campaign trail?
We have been. We've been knocking on doors. Absolutely.
We've had some nice weather for that.
It's surprisingly warm weather for this time of year.
Yeah, it's awesome. So today we're here to talk about, you released your priorities for the election, for this campaign. So we received those today, and we wanted to pick your brain a little bit about some of the topics.
Let's do that.
All right. So some of the ones that stood out to me, obviously, we have responsible spending as a huge, and taxes have been a huge election issue from what we've heard so far.
Sure. Yeah.
So how exactly would you plan on addressing that with City Council if you're reelected?
So it's a great question, and I think what we need to do is build on the work that we've done. So municipal taxation is a difficult issue because it's contingent on a number of things, and one of the things it's contingent on is assessment. So rates rise and fall with assessment. So you have to really focus as a city council on your spending, and if you've got your spending as under control as you can, and if you're spending responsibly and properly, everything else should follow.
Right.
And we've really focused heavily on spending over the last 4 years, and we've actually brought down city spending. Over the last 4 years, though, we've also lost assessment base in different categories, and that affects rates. But you have to focus on spending. So some of the things that we've done to do that, we've changed our budgeting cycle so mayor and council could have more input in the budgeting process, which I think is really, really positive. We've introduced a vacancy management plan so that every time a position becomes vacant in City Hall, the position is considered, and if the position isn't needed or we can do without the position the position's removed.
Right.
If jobs can be amalgamated, that happens. We also implemented for a period a job gapping policy, which was very helpful in saving some money, which was if a job was available, it came open, and the job didn't have to be filled immediately, we gapped the job, and so you have a savings in that period of time where you don't have somebody in that position. So we've done those things. One of the other things that we've done, which is really critical and really, I think, help people and help their pocketbooks, is we, for the first time in a very long time, reduced the sewer surcharge. That not only helped our residential ratepayers, it helped our commercial ratepayers.
Right.
So when you have people on fixed incomes, you really have to look at things, and you really have to take a long-term view, and you have to treat tax dollars with the utmost respect, and you have to make sure you're spending them all properly. So there's a number of things that were frankly underfunded at the city. There's also always ways that you could find to improve. So I think the next council has to continue to look at ways to improve, and you have to really test during the budgeting cycle that you're doing things as best as you can. If you keep your spending down and you keep your spending very responsible, and you're spending just on the things that you need to spend to develop your community and to make sure that people have a good quality of life and that they have good infrastructure, then the rest should follow.
And in terms of funding, one of the other issues or priorities that was listed, it was kind of dealing with our opioid epidemic here in the Soo. Now, we talked about this before, you and I, back in February after Steeltown Down, after everything kind of, it's been an ongoing issue, but after things really came to light for a lot of people. Now, where are we at in terms of levying funding for that, or have you been meeting with stakeholders regarding that issue?
We've done a lot of work on that issue, and we did, just to be clear, we've done a lot of work on that issue prior to Steeltown Down, but we've continued on that. There's nothing in the municipal levy that funds that type of care.
Right.
And we're not putting anything in the municipal levy that funds that type of care because we have healthcare partners across our community that have funding for that. But there's something called the Algoma Leadership Table, and it's a group of leaders from the different social service organizations in our community, including police services. And that table we've assisted, and that table has hired a person to look at the city's drug strategy and to make sure that if there are any gaps in our drug strategy, those gaps are addressed. And the city is supporting that project. So the city is supporting that full-time equivalent through Future Sault Ste. Marie, which is a community development project that we've started. So we're working on that. The DSAB through Mike Nadeau has been really strong and very helpful and supportive, and they found some resources to do some policy development and some support development. So they're assisting with our drug strategy at the same time.
Right.
So there are resources that have come and been invested since over the last number of months. I can tell you there's a full community effort to address these issues, but they're complex issues and they're challenging.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
issues. We have opened the rapid access clinic a number of months back, and Surrey Hospitals is still trying to get the necessary capital support permission to operate a level 3 withdrawal
So that's still in the
system.
works?
That's still in the works. So we're still working on that. So what I've done is I've participated with and supported the committee and the Algoma Leadership Table, so the Sault Ste. Marie Drug Strategy Committee and the Algoma Leadership Table. They know they have my support. I've been supporting them and working with them. And what I can do is play an advocacy role. I can bring people together, but I can also play an advocacy role. And a good example is the advocacy role I play with Surrey Hospital. I helped Surrey Hospital get the permissions it needed to do angioplasty in Sault Ste. Marie. So those are the type of things that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help our partners in the community that are
Connect with the right people.
Connect with the right people and get the funding they need.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other topics like reconciliation and crime in Sault Ste. Marie. So we'll be right back after this break with Mayor Provenzano. And we are back in the studio with Mayor Christian Provenzano talking about some of the priorities for your campaign and also for, for the next 4 years if you're reelected. So we talked a little bit about, taxes, and we talked about the opioid crisis here in the Soo. On that note, though, another big election issue, from what we've seen anyway, has been crime rates in Sault Ste. Marie. Now, Chief Stevenson has provided a lot of updates and transparency and, the numbers behind his Project Heat, and that's all been great. How do you plan on kind of keeping that momentum going with, keeping things kind of under handle?
Yeah, I think you've landed on the crux of it. We have to keep the momentum going.
Yeah.
So we've got a new chief here that it seems to me the service has a lot of respect for and is eager to work with. And I certainly can say the Police Service Board is really happy with how Chief Stevenson has taken to his role. We as a Police Service Board, and I can certainly speak on behalf of the Chief here, we recognize that there's that concern. And that's why the Police Service Board was very clear with the Chief. We want the resources at the police services and the officers at the police services to be deployed to deal with the more critical issues.
Right.
And we can leave other things aside for now. And we have been very clear with the Chief, and the Chief's been very focused on moving officers and making sure officers are on the front line. We need our police officers out in the community.
Boots on the ground.
We need boots on the ground. So Project Heat, it was a project that we started a number of months back, and that's been, as the Chief has indicated, it's been successful in making some significant arrests. We're starting Project Core, which is a transition from Project Heat. But one of the challenges that we have, and it's something that the Chief has requested my assistance to lobby on, the Chief is lobbying on himself,
right,
is catch and release. Right, so we're arresting people, and they're getting out on bail within 24 hours.
Right.
So in some cases, I think it would be in some situations the person should maybe not be getting out on bail, but that's a process the municipality doesn't have a lot of control over.
It's more of a provincial
problem.
And
there are regulations and laws that they follow and they apply, and there are standards they apply. So we've got to work with the provincial government on that issue.
Right.
And so I know that the Chief has met with our MPP, and they've had some discussions about this. And I know our MPP is sensitive to the issue, and it's something that we'll continue to engage on. So the community has to recognize that the police services is engaged. Mm-hmm. And we have a good force of good officers, and we have a really strong police chief, and we're going to stay on these issues. And the police chief was very clear at council last week. He wants everybody in the community to know, including the people in the community that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that are engaging in criminal activity, that we're not going away. Right. And that we're going to be aggressive on this.
Seems like we've made a lot of progress, but there is, some ways to go. Now, another issue that you had pointed out that's definitely been a hot topic has been transit in Sault Ste. Marie. So the bus schedule has been re-optimized and changed, and there's been a lot of different opinions about that. So where are we at in terms of strengthening our transit system in the Soo?
So look, the whole optimization process was the result of a specific goal to improve transit. Prior to optimizing the routes, there were a lot of complaints about the routes. Right. There was a lot of people that were dissatisfied with transit. So we took a significant amount of time to look at how we can improve it. Whenever routes change, it is challenging because people get used to, even the ones that don't like the routes, they get used to the routes the way they were. So we really need to work with the public and our drivers to now take the good work that we've done, take the good part of it, and then look at maybe some changes that we made that we shouldn't have, or some routes that maybe aren't as convenient anymore.
As they could be.
And address those and build on this. But it also is going to take some investment in transit. And there is a plan, a capital plan going forward for the next number of years that staff will be bringing to the next council to take advantage of some federal funds. We are buying 2 new buses this year, which is great because our fleet is very aged. And then there's a plan to continue to buy new buses at a reasonable pace over the next number of years. And there's a plan to get the technology we need so that if you're a transit user, you can see exactly where your bus is.
That's what they have in Toronto and
That's
Ottawa.
right. So we're looking at that for next year. So you'll be able to see where your bus is, when it's going to be at that stop, and what bus you have to get onto to connect to other buses. One of the problems with the route optimization right now is we need a transfer point. We need a more stable transfer point in the northern part of the city.
Right.
So that not everything has to come back to the terminal. And we're trying to do that, but they need to work on those transfer points so that you can get on, you don't have to come back to the terminal to get on a different bus. You can connect with a bus out there in the city and then go from there. So all the transit users in the city need to know that this is a high priority. I think it's a matter of economic development. People have to be able to get around and get to work.
Absolutely.
It's also a matter of social equity.
Right.
Like if you can't afford a car, it shouldn't be an inconvenience to get around Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah.
And when I first became the mayor was some people was taking them 2 hours to get from one part of the city to the other.
Like how could you even work really if
That's difficult.
Yeah.
So that's what we're aiming to address. We've made some progress, but I want to acknowledge we have some ways to go. And we've had some very productive meetings with our transit staff and our bus drivers. And senior staff, management is going to work with the transit staff and the bus drivers and the folks in transit, boots on the ground, as you said earlier, to make sure we make the necessary adjustments so that the users enjoy using the system and we can get ridership up.
Well, it sounds to me like a lot of the priorities that you've listed, they're things that you've started in your first 4 years and that you're hoping to continue throughout your last. So as opposed to new projects, it's a lot of continuation and continuing to build on.
So when you look at the size of the city, when you look at an organization like City Hall, I was just elected less than 4 years ago. It takes some time to get things moving and underway and to make real change. And what I wanted people to visit my website, christianprovenzano.ca. And what I hope people can see is that we've worked hard to make some productive developments and to make some productive change that we can build on. And we want to carry through. There's a lot of really positive, exciting things happening at the PUC. There's some great opportunities in tourism. There's some fantastic, really fantastic developments with our First Nations communities and with Algoma University. And there's a lot to be excited about and to look forward to. And I want to serve one more term, and just one more term, so I can finish what I started. So I can see these projects through, and so I can make sure that we go in the direction that we are now headed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Christian, for taking the time out of campaigning and working.
I was
at
City Hall, and I'm mayoring all day, and I was happy to come here.
Thank you so much, and stay tuned, viewers. We will be hosting a mayor's debate on October 2nd, where everybody will be in the studio and chatting. So stay tuned for that and more election coverage on Soo Online. We'll be back with more news after this.